It will change the way you think about it if you break it down and analyze it and think through it effectively. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Shout out to all of you out there who have been posting this podcast or sharing it on your Instagram pages. It's awesome to wake up again in the morning and to see so many of you screenshotting it and sharing it on your social media pages or sharing it with your friends and family and so on. I do appreciate you all. All right, let's talk about something that everybody talks about. Most people have never even thought about what it actually is. What I'm talking about is fear. I mean, how many times has someone said, I'm fearful of that, or I have fear about something? We've got to understand what fear actually is, though, in order to use the language behind it. So, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I went and looked it up and I researched it, and I thought, well, we know what happens in the brain when fear gets triggered, but what actually is fear? What's it the perception of? And it's the perception of death. So when someone says, I have a fear around, what they're saying is, I have a fear around death. And this thing triggers that fear. So if someone has a fear of flying, what they're saying is, I perceive that if I get into a plane, I'm going to die. Now, someone might say, I have the fear of running out of money. What they're saying is, if I run out of money, I will die. Well, I have a fear of falling over and hurting my leg. I fear that if I fall over and hurt my leg, I may die. I worry about whether my kids will be okay, and because of that, I fear them going to school and that they might hurt themselves. What you're saying is, I have a fear that if my kids go to school and hurt themselves, they may die. When you understand that fear is a survival response, it's a response to make sure that you're safe and that you survive and stay alive. Now, when you're born, you essentially have two fears. The fear of loud noises. So if you've got a newborn baby and you make a loud noise, it scares the shit out of them. The other thing is if you drop that baby, like if you pick it up and then just let it drop and free fall, it will normally freak out a little bit. So it has a fear of falling and it has a fear of loud noises. Other than that, all other fears are normally exaggerated responses from some time in our life. Now, if you think about this, you're watching television. The media comes on and shows that there's these places over the other side of the world that you've never ever heard of. And someone's dropping a bomb on those places. Now you start to worry about your own life. That worry turns into fear. Wow, if I travel, I might get hurt. You start watching through TikTok and there's these young people who are going around stealing phones off of people, right? And they've got hoods and beanies on. And these people walking down the street and you see these young kids running up with their hoods and beanies on, and they run past and they grab a mobile phone out of someone's hand, and all of a sudden you go, oh, no, I was going to travel to London, but it's just unsafe, and it triggers a fear response. All of those things are exaggerated fears based on the perceptions that you have throughout your life. And this is why we've got to be careful about the information that we feed to ourselves, because the media love that response. They love it. And so they will trigger your fear response because it's so primitive. If I told you today that in Australia, there's 27 million Australians, around about 27, maybe 26 point something, but it's close to 27, maybe even close to 28 now. Let's say we've got 27 million Australians, and 27 million people went and did the exact same thing that they did last week on this day. So if you're listening to this on Monday, last Monday, 27 million people essentially did the same thing that they did the Monday before. They probably got in the car, drove to the same job. Most people eat the same food. They went to the same gym because it's Monday morning. And so most people do this almost the same thing. Even if you think about it, the average person eats around, I think it's about 33 or 35 or 37 of the same foods. We just put them in different groups. Like if you think about it, how many times do you put something like onion or maybe celery or even some sort of herb and spice which contains celery and onion on your food? People eat mainly the same foods or the same food groups over and over and over again, just in different varieties and different, like if you think about wheat, how many times in an average week does someone eat a wheat product or a dairy product, which is made from cow's milk? Most of us do the same shit and eat the same foods over and over and over and over. And what we might do is we might variety it up. So instead of last Monday going to the gym at 7 o'clock, we might go at 7:30 in the morning, and then we go, well, that's different. And instead of having, let's say, chicken and rice on a Monday night for dinner, we might have that for lunch on a Friday. And so we call that variety in life. But most people are pretty predictable and they do the same shit. Now, anyone in marketing knows that that doesn't evoke a response. So I can't get on there and say, hey, would you like to better your life? We can make life just a little bit better this week for you. Most people never buy that product. But what you could do is say, do you know that every week you're getting older? And when you get older, you have wrinkles. And when you start to get wrinkles, you may be judged and look different. And because of that, now you're less valuable in life. Now, we might not say that exactly in those words, but essentially that's what marketing does. It makes you feel that way so that you buy the product or the service. So fear is a primitive response that marketers use and that people in human behavior or that understand human behavior will use to trigger a certain emotion or act, a certain action or a behavior. You might do it with your kids and say, hey, if you do this, Santa Claus won't come in Christmas. So you're using fear to drive behavior because it's a primitive response. Now, unfortunately, what happens is that most of society are now driven by fear, and it's fear of stuff that they've never even experienced. Like, if I go over to this country, these bad things could happen. You know, I even got told when I went to America just a month ago, be careful over there. You know, I heard that there's, this shooting happened, but I don't even know how many 100 million people in America. I think it's like 300 and something million, close to 400 million people. It might even be more. I could probably actually look it up right now while I'm here instead of just giving false data. Let me have a look. All right, so 345.997 million people. So let's say 346 million people. Now, depending on where that comes from, it says it comes from the Worldometer 2024. So I assume that that's fairly accurate. So let's say that there is 350 million Americans. And let's say that someone watched someone getting shot on TV. And now they come to me and say, you better be careful in America because people everywhere are getting shot. It's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but it triggers a fear response, so they remember it. Now they've just passed that fear on to me. So I'm going around America going, fuck, I hope I don't get shot. And this is how fear exacerbates or grows through society. We've got to be really careful with that. You've got to be careful doing that to your kids because if you consistently promote fear, all that's going to happen is they're going to grow up with worry, stress, anxieties, which really all of those things are a fear response. So whenever I've worked with people or who come to Thrive Time or who hire me one-on-one as a consultant, when I work with them and they talk about having anxieties, anxieties are a fear response. They're a survival response to a threat of life at its core. If you're a good coach or a good therapist, you need to go in there and find out why they have that trigger, why they have that response. And normally it's a time-based response as well. So when people is anxious, they're future projecting that something bad is going to happen, or they're in a rush to do something. And so because of that, they start to have anxieties. It's an adrenaline response, a survival response. Coming back to what I was talking about with fear though, we really have to make sure we keep our fear under control and logically think through it. Because if fear is a survival response and you fear missing out on your favorite pair of shoes because I've only got 30 pairs in store and you better get there first thing tomorrow morning. Is that really a survival response, or is that you just fucking with your own mind and your own perceptions and not being able to control your own thoughts? If you're fearful that you're not going to get somewhere on time, is that really a survival response? Are you really going to die because of it? Or are you now triggering and having an anxiety response or a panic attack because you're in a rush to get somewhere and you think that you're going to be 5 minutes late? And now it's just triggering this survival response, which doesn't even make logical sense. But you're allowing that algorithm, I guess you could say, inside your own mind to just run freely. And what you'll find is that people who are fear-driven normally grow more fear-driven as they get older. I've got family members who are like this. And almost the number one thing that they say is be careful. Be careful on your trip. Be careful flying. Be careful doing this, because they live in fear their whole life. That's not a great way of living. Go through today and really analyze your thoughts. If we think about anxiety, if we think about worry, if we think about high stress, in most cases, they're fear-driven. See if you can analyze the fear and then ask yourself the logical question. Is this a survival response, or is this just me allowing myself to run an outdated algorithm inside my own mind, or an outdated neurocircuit inside my own mind that was given to me or gifted to me from somebody else in life that had nothing to do with me? Was it the media? Do you know how many times I've traveled somewhere and people say it's dangerous, be careful wherever I'm traveling? And it's completely safe. I've found most places that I travel around the world to be completely safe, and most people are great people. Yeah, there's douchebags everywhere, like anywhere you travel. But most people are great people when you travel. They're fine. But if you watch the news, you'll think that certain countries that you go to are horrific because they grab it and then they over-exaggerate it and it seems to become a problem. Now, yeah, there's war zones and shit like that. But I would hope that you wouldn't travel to a war zone. You can still go to the same country that's in war in certain locations. That doesn't mean that the whole country is going to be in, have problems. When I was in America, do you know one of the most common things that people said from America was, how was the lockdowns? And I said, oh, we were locked down. I'm in Adelaide or South Australia. I think we had lockdowns for like 2 weeks. And they said, oh, I thought you were locked down for like a whole year. And I said, that's Melbourne. That's one state. And they're like, oh, we didn't even know that. The media said that you guys were locked down for a whole year. And I'm like, no, they essentially took one of the smallest states in the country and then exaggerated it like the whole country was locked down, apparently. So we just got to remember that this is what the media do. This is what marketing does. Just really analyze to see whether you're allowing your fears to run free and whether you're buying into that bullshit or whether you're controlling yourself and realizing that most fears are bullshit. This is why I don't have a fear of losing money. I don't have a fear of failure because that would mean that failure equals death, and failure doesn't equal death. Failure equals learning. Therefore, if I fail, I learn better shit, and the more I learn, the more I achieve. So I don't care about making mistakes. I don't really care about failure, but most people do. And that's why they suck. That's why they don't get results, because they're so worried about failing. They're so worried about what other people think. They have this fear that they just let run free inside their own mind. Crazy. People fear losing money. Money's just the exchange of value. If you want to make more money, create greater value. Hold people accountable to the value exchange. See your own value. Keep growing your value. The more that you learn, the more valuable you become. The more you hang out with the right people, the more your networks become valuable as well, and the more they refer people to you. The more valuable you become and the more valuable your life becomes, the more money you make. But most people think about money as being this physical, tangible thing, and then they fear losing it, and they fear running out of money because they feel that they're going to lose everything. Again, this is an over-exaggerated survival response. It's fucking crazy. Now, I would understand that if you're living in a third world country like Ethiopia and there's no food, completely understandable to have a fear of, if I make a mistake, then I could lose everything and die. When you're living in a first world country where there is essentially free public healthcare like Australia, you've got the dole, or if you don't work, you go on some sort of a Centrelink or benefit scheme or whatever, you'll probably be fine. Most of the time you can get a roof over your head. Even if you fail, most people have friends and family that you can stay with. It makes no logical sense that most of your failures keep triggering off over and over and over again. And it makes no logical sense that most people with anxiety disorders, who worry all the time about things, who are stressed all the time about things, it makes no logical sense that those stresses or those worries or those fears are even real. It's just that they have a crazy perception that's never been checked. And because of that, they can't govern their own thoughts in their own mind, which now means that they can't govern their own emotions. And normally when you can't govern your thoughts, you can't govern your own emotions. And when you can't govern your own emotions and thoughts, you can't govern your behaviors. And those behaviors create a feedback loop. And now you're trapped inside this identity of stress and worry and anxiousness and so on. It's not that hard to change it. You just have to have the courage to change it and learn from people like myself or other experts out there who can help you with this stuff. But yeah, this week, really check in with those fears and find out if they are actually a survival response or they're just bullshit. And then change the way you think about it. Because I guarantee once you free yourself from these things, you'll take off. You start performing at a whole nother level that you haven't even tapped into yet. Anyway, Driven Mofos, have a great day. Keep kicking ass. I hope these podcasts are helping. I hope you're enjoying yourself. Please remember, sharing's caring. If you can share this with a friend or family member, and let's get more people onto this podcast. Let's keep creating a kick-ass community of driven mofos who want to achieve more, who want to be more, and who won't take living an average life as an option. Let's keep kicking ass. Anyway, sharing's caring. Please share it this week, and I'll see you on the next episode. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.